Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Matt Kalinsky, and I'll be your host on this segment of Entrepreneur You Should Know. This is a video podcast that's going to be playing live on Facebook and YouTube, as well as recorded for future edits. And today, my guest is James Webb. And let me bring up one thing here. Very good. All right. Hey, guys. So James Webb is my guest today. I'm really excited about this conversation. I haven't talked with James in a while because of everything you're going to hear about today, but he considers himself a serial entrepreneur. He has a business coach mentality. He's guided hundreds of companies. He also just recently got his pilot license, bought a plane. He is considered he considers himself a strong dad and a wonderful husband. He is also an American soldier, which we're going to learn a little bit about his story and journey today. But more than importantly, he has bought and he's sold multiple companies. He's coached over 100 businesses. He's internationally recognized for his questionable, quote unquote, this is his words, quote unquote, questionable marketing campaigns. And he's been a member of EO since 2010. Without further ado, let me bring on James Webb. How you doing?
I was waiting for the applause, the background.
I know. That would be cool, right?
Thank you.
I should get the sound effects to be like, like they're doing at the hockey games and basketball games.
I could have pictures of people in the seats behind me, because that's not going to be weird to look back on in 5 years.
James, why do you have so many people in your background? Huh? So how are you doing?
I hanging in there, man. Just living in this crazy world that we find ourselves in right now.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit before the show, and it's like, man, like, what has this cat been up to, man? You've been like traveling the world and going into the military. And the last time I saw you was November 2019, so almost 11 months ago. And at that time, you were preparing to do basic training at that time. And then I haven't heard from you since. So.
That's right. I left and then the entire world went to crap, and then I came back and I don't know what you guys did with it.
I know. Somebody broke it, but it probably wasn't you since you weren't around. So.
Yeah, no, I was doing push-ups and getting yelled at by people half my age.
So if you could just fill in our listeners a little bit about your background, and I want to definitely dive into your first kind of entrepreneur journey, but then kind of how have you grown as an entrepreneur? You know, you talk about hundreds of coaching opportunities, and you talk about all these businesses you've started. So love to kind of like get some understanding of who you are in your own words.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I do everything backwards. Just like I joined the military 6 days before the age cutoff, and I was the oldest person, not just not cadet, the airman, in the entire squadron, but except for there was a lieutenant colonel and a retired chief master sergeant were the only two people that were older than I was.
And so what did they say to you? Were they like, get the heck out of here, son?
Everybody was like, what are you doing? What choices in your life have you made that led you to this?
That you ended up here. Yeah.
That's right. At 41 years old, going through basic training with people that I could have been dad to 90% of those people that were there.
Sure, you might have been, yeah.
Yeah, no, I wasn't. But I also realized my dad was in the military for 22 years, and he retired at the age of 38, and I joined when I was 2 years older than him when he retired.
But that was one of your lifelong dreams, right? I mean, your motto is don't live life with regrets. So I mean, this was something that
live life with no regrets. And I had for a long time, I'd always wished I had served at least one enlistment in the military, because I'm so thankful to be born in this country, and the opportunities and just everything we have in this country is very unique in the history of the world. And it was a regret of mine of never serving in uniform. And then after I sold, it all happened all kind of in the same time that I found out that I could still join. My wife was on board, and so
which is probably a very tough for her as well.
Yeah, we still have talks about that. We're like, now I didn't know you were going to be gone for 6 months at a time and leaving me with 3 kids, and then we decide to homeschool. We leave the state, come to a new state. So it was a complete mess of a life and crazy. But I'm glad I did it. Ironically, though, knowing what I know now, unfortunately, I don't think I would do it again.
Yeah, that's fascinating. You know, you don't live with regrets. You would make the same. Well, I don't know if you make the same mistake, right? Or not mistake, but just decision. But you're glad you did it. And sometimes we're happy when we make bad decisions. You know,
yeah, no, I'm glad I
is.
did it because I can wear the uniform with pride. I can, you know, put the U.S. Air Force here, you know, my name there. I'm glad I can do that. However, it is not the same military that I was expecting at all.
Well, you're an entrepreneur, though. Remember, I mean, you make you know, as entrepreneurs, we make things changes on a dime. I mean, you're not allowed to pivot. No. You're only pivoting when you're marching, right?
That's right. That's it. That's all you got.
That's the definition of a pivot in the military.
Yeah, that's right. Left face, yes, sir. So. Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting. And I'm thankful that I'm a reservist in the National Guard. So I only have to be there once a month, but
are you still in the heavy machinery operators?
Yep. Yeah. Now, tongue in cheek, sarcastically, I always said, well, even if I have to serve my country by digging ditches, that's what I'll do. And guess what I'm doing? That's exactly what I'm doing. Yeah. And unfortunately, as the lowest ranking person in the shop,
you're doing the hard work
with shovels. That's it. You grab the shovel, show me and the other, 18-year-old kids.
Where's the plow? No plow, no backhoe, nothing to use there.
Nope. Here's your shovel right here.
And that's because you're on good behavior. Imagine what you're on if you were bad behavior.
Yeah, that's right. They'd give me one of those plastic forks from Taco Bell.
But your family was in the military, right?
Yeah.
So that was kind of, and I'm sure they're very proud. Well, I'm proud of you as a friend, but I'm sure your family is, proud of you that you made that chance. And now your kids, you can say, hey, kids, it's never too late to make a decision and to learn. I mean, this is such a good life lesson all around. But that's right. I'm sure it came at the back of sore bones and sore muscles.
Yes. Now I will admit that I've never been in the best shape of my life until like the week after I left basic training. I was like, wow, I didn't even know I had muscles there. I was really impressed.
The key is to keep it.
No, and I haven't done that at all. I haven't ran a single block. I'm like, you know what? Screw that. I did so many push-ups and sit-ups and 1x3s. And all
not even if Cold Stone is closing and you need the Cold Stone, you're not going to run to it. Huh?
No. And what's beautiful is in my age bracket for our fitness evaluations, I basically can walk the 1.5 miles. And they're just like, can you do a push-up?
22 miles, 22-minute mile.
That's right. Yeah. And then they're like, can you get out of a chair? That's all we really need to know without hurting yourself.
Is it a rocking chair or not?
That's right. You get a run and go.
Just prepare it. Well, I mean, what a fascinating journey you've had. Tell us now, kind of before this, you recently sold your business. So this is why you have all this kind of free time to make interesting life choices. But what kind of kid were you? I mean, when did you start entrepreneurship? Tell us your journey to kind of where you are today to live a life of freedom. I mean, in all aspects of the way.
That's right. And we have a couple of family core values. The first one is freedom. And so that drives a lot of what we do. Whenever I talk to people or, whether it be on a professional basis or personal, I'm really hardcore about no debt, because debt is just handcuffs and slavery.
Financial freedom. Yeah.
Financial freedom. Absolutely. Faith. So I'm a Christian. Our family is very devoted. Go to church, do all that kind of stuff.
Good for you.
And adventure is the other core value that our family has. So
nice.
It has been. And adventure is both hard at times, and then you look back with, sometimes you're like, wow, that was interesting.
That was an adventure.
It was an adventure. So it might be through Mordor or something like that, maybe. But
COVID.
No, and for the most part, it's been really good. That's right. So, as a kid, I was a mechanic. That's where I made my trade. Is I went to automotive school, one of the technical schools, and I was an automotive and diesel mechanic. Worked at some of the dealerships, and then I went to school to be an electromechanical engineer, to work at maybe one of the airlines or for one of the car companies in their engineering side. That's what I thought I wanted to do. And so owning a business never crossed my mind once. Now, ironically, since I was, probably 9, 10 years old, I've always traded and like bought a little dirt bike and then fixed it up and then sold it, or bought something and then traded it or sold. I was always doing that. And before I was 18 years old, I had already owned 20 cars.
What?
Yeah, because I'd buy them and then sell them and buy them and sell them. That's just what I did.
Because you'd pick some up because you were good with your hands and you knew what you were doing.
Most of the time it's because I bought something and then it just broke and I sold it for scrap and then had to buy something else.
So it was the opposite. You weren't making money.
I became a mechanic so that I could afford to drive a car that I couldn't afford.
Oh, sure. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Backwards. Like you said at the beginning, you worked backwards.
Yeah, that's right. Everything is backwards. So I, while I was in the school to electromechanical engineering, is when I had a life change, and then I went more into ministries, and then I met my wife in Kentucky at the time, and she was from Portland, Oregon, which right now is on fire, apparently.
Oh, yeah. Wow, I didn't know.
Yeah, all the wildfires and stuff out there, and the city riots and everything. It's kind of crazy there right now. But anyways, so I met her, and she moved back to Portland, and me and my best friend, Matt, ironically, not this Matt for everybody else, but a different Matt, who still lives in Portland. I said, hey, man, you want to move to Portland? And he's like, yeah, sure, why not? So we got in a car, drove to Portland, moved there, and I was waiting for my visa to be approved to go to Australia as a missionary with Youth for Christ.
Okay.
And
in Portland.
Well, yeah, it was just a jumping off point because I had put the application in, and I mean, who knew how difficult it was for an American citizen to get a work visa for Australia? Apparently, it's really, really difficult. And so I was only supposed to be there for 2 weeks. Well, I finally left Portland 2.5 years later. But in those 2 weeks, I had to make some money because we had rent coming in and everything. So I put an ad on Craigslist as a mobile mechanic and did a couple of that. And then I fell back into some of my old habits of I went to a car auction and bought a car for $250, fixed it up, sold it, a couple $1,000s. And I'm like,
now you're on the right track. Now you're making money from it.
Yes. Yeah. Enough to kind of live. And then, so I just kept doing that. And then before I knew it, I had to get a dealer's license, and we were living in a 1-bedroom apartment, and the apartment law the rules say that you're only allowed to park like one car in the parking lot.
Sure.
They didn't know I had like half of the cars in the parking lot were mine.
So you were like a full car dealer, essentially like a used car dealer. Wow.
That's right.
By accident. You became a used car dealer by accident. All right.
Yep. And then I had a truck, and a guy called me up and said, hey, I've got this old Camaro. You want to trade for it? I'm like, heck yes. And so I traded for this Camaro. It was the coolest. It was bright orange with white racing stripe, a big engine. It was awesome. Finished that up. It needed a couple little things to finish it up, make it complete. Finished it up. I took it to the very first car I've ever taken to a car show. It won first place and sold at the car show. Yeah. And I made way more money off of that and had a lot more fun doing it than all the other Toyotas and Subarus.
Why did that guy trade you?
People trade for all kinds of crazy stuff. Oh. It's the intrinsic value of everything. Yeah. It's
you just didn't like the car. Camaro.
Yeah. But it traded for that, and then that got me into the exotic and classic car world, and then from there started selling stuff all over the world. So Australia to Europe to the Middle East. I mean, everywhere. It's Scandinavian countries up there. A lot of that stuff.
Cool.
And moved to Colorado.
So you might not have been a natural entrepreneur, but you were a natural salesman, and you kind of took your salesman with your mechanic skills almost and merged the two. Yeah.
No, it was mechanic and necessity. And
sometimes the best things come out of necessity.
That's true. And I 100% attribute even surviving that first whirlwind of entrepreneurialism with EO. And it was in 2009 I was selling a Cadillac, and a guy came in and he was like, "Hey, this and that. Hey, have you heard about this organization EO?" And I'm like, "I don't know anything about that." So he told me, and I called and found out, and I
You're
went to the
hooked.
meeting, and I for the first time in my entire life, I was like, "Holy, these people are just as crazy as I am." And all of us, none of us know what we're doing, really.
Yeah.
So
very similar to my experience too. Like I met Laura Webb, same last name,
No
different.
relation.
I met Laura Webb at a Inc. 500 conference, and I had no idea. I mean, I'm at the Inc. 500. I'm number 323 in the fastest growing companies, and I had no idea it existed. And the minute I met Laura, and then the whole group that was there, I was like, "Oh, I'll do whatever it takes. Please let me in."
Yep. Yeah, that's right. It's like I found my tribe.
Yeah.
The other people that were living and trying to figure this whole business ownership, entrepreneurial life out. Yeah. And so I was hooked.
So I was in 2010. So you've been a member for 10 years. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. In one form or fashion. That was through the accelerator program. And then started learning about, there's books about entrepreneurial and how to run a business. And so that's when the library behind me, this one of 4 bookshelves. So
you got a nice display, man. You got the flag, you got some constitutions, you got some you got it all. It's nice.
That's one of these. That's the Declaration of Independence Day.
There you go.
The other one's the Constitution.
All right, perfect.
So my life is sworn to protect that one.
Yeah, I know. It's all like
that one
right there.
So we moved.
So hey, when you were in Kentucky, were you at by chance Nazareth Farm?
Never heard of it.
Okay, but you were volunteering there. Were you volunteering there?
I don't know of it.
Oh, okay. No, it's like I did a mission trip in college, and I went to Nazareth Farm, which is it's a foothills of the Appalachian community. Poorest of the poor, and
that was my family. You probably came to visit my house.
No, that's where you lived in the foothills of Appalachia. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I was there once then for 1 week volunteering.
And boy, I tell you what, you get them people down there, they talk like this, but they can play some music now, boys. I tell you, they on that old banjo.
Oh wow! Okay, small world. So cool.
Yeah. So moved to Colorado, and then the automotive business I had is when I found out about EO, I was in Colorado. And then 2008 happened. The whole world economy slowed down a lot. Yeah. And then I learned that people stopped buying expensive toys in a depression or recession.
Probably what they're going to do now.
That's right. And through EO, we pivoted everything over to an e-commerce online business, which was a million times better than the business I was running before. More profitable, better cash flow, everything. Through the existing relationships I already had in place, all of it. And then had that business for only a year, and then I sold it for family, personal reasons. I realized that I was more in love with my business than my family.
Yeah, I've been there.
And I wanted my legacy, because when I'm 90 years old, and when all the business is gone, when all my kids are grown and gone, when all the toys, airplanes, boats, motorhomes, all that stuff is gone, the only person that will be there is my wife. And I wanted it to be the same wife that I had when I started that journey.
That's a good goal.
And so, being an entrepreneur and being married is a really hard thing.
Yeah.
Because we have 2 brides, essentially, 2 loves. So I said, what? I'm selling it, closing the doors on that, and then focusing on being a husband and a father.
Cool.
And I'm glad I did.
Yeah. No, I mean, you very clearly, dedicated to your family, which is awesome. And that's why I think probably why it was shocking that you left for 6 months, because you are that kind of reliable stone, for your family. And so, but again, it just comes back to show you that you're going to be stronger for it. Your family will be, you're going to be a better role model for it. So it's a really cool story that you've put together, and you're still young. You still have, tons of life left, and you're still free, which is very cool. So, What does the next part of your journey look like? So you recently bought a plane, is that right?
Yeah, as a part of my midlife crisis. Yeah.
Are you still financially free?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, that doesn't matter.
Yeah. So we sold our house, sold the company, sold everything we had in Colorado, moved to Florida about 2 years ago. And that's when I joined the military. And then after I joined, I realized that there was going to be quite a long time before I'd actually leave for basic training. So we bought a motorhome and then cruised the country for a few months and saw all the national parks. And we were in it was 9. I don't know. It all just blurs together. 31 states, 8,000 miles. I want to say 13 national parks.
Cool.
Coast to coast.
Now it's cool to be to drive around your motorhome when with COVID, everybody's getting that and RVing, but you did it like a year before. You were like a trendsetter.
We were homeschooling then. I mean, finally the world was catching on board with this stuff.
You are obviously a trendsetter in many areas of your life.
Completely ignorant of how awesome, how cool I really am, and I have no idea, and I don't think I am.
No wonder your wife loves you so much. You're just so cool.
That's right. James Dean level coolness. So yeah, we traveled around the country in the motorhome, and honestly, I thought the economy was going to crash a long time ago, back in 2016. And it didn't. And so I've been playing it really safe ever since then. And even now, it's getting more and more acute as every day goes by.
I know a lot of people who pulled everything out in 2016 because it was going on for 8 years at that time of this continued growth, or after the recession hit, and so a lot of people have been playing it safe, and they might have lost out, they might have not, but they slept better, and I'm sure if you could sleep better, you're going to be, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually better for it, no matter if you made a few $1,000 or not,
I hope so, but there's always that fear of missing out. I'm really bummed that I missed a 35% gain in real estate, because we sold out of all of our real estate holdings in Colorado, and Colorado's been on just crazy hyper growth. But you're right, sleeping better at night, and
but it comes down to your priorities, and freedom was on there, and part of it's financial, and part of it's, freedom of not worrying about loans and stuff. So.
Yeah, and that's why we homeschool, for freedom, so that we can travel. Hey, instead of reading about China, let's go to China.
Cool.
Instead of reading about the Grand Canyon, let's go to the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
So and the plane is the other part of it. So we had the RV, we're homeschooling and traveling around. And I sold that, joined the military, which ironically is a little bit of a double-edged sword with military and freedom, because you're under really strict rules about what you're allowed to do and not do. So as a soldier, as an airman, there's not much freedom in what the rails that you have to ride, but the whole purpose is about protecting the freedom that we enjoy as Americans. Sure. That part, and then the airplane is freedom, and I didn't realize it at the time, but traveling by air right now, it is massively difficult. Because one, just a couple days ago, they cut like half of the flights, and now there's fewer flights, and the scheduling is all messed up. And you gotta, of course, wear your mask, have temperature checked, be spaced this far apart. I mean, it's crazy the amount of just stuff you have to go through. And I have my own plane, and I'm like, hey, we're gonna go to Atlanta, and normally it'd be a 9-hour, 10-hour drive, and I'm like, okay, I'll be there by lunch. You just fly up and get it done, and not have to wait and go through TSA, not have to check bags, not have to do any of this stuff. I mean, I'm like,
how long is the flight up to Atlanta? Like 4 hours, 3 hours?
In my little airplane, it's about 4 hours. Yeah.
That is really cool.
Yeah. But you think about it, that's still faster than you could do at an airline. if you take into account
Oh
the
yeah.
time in TSA, the time you're
Oh yeah.
waiting, the time you go to
Just-
get your bags.
Just
all
the
that.
fact that you can park and just walk on your plane.
I park right next to my plane too. I just park. I open the trunk, open the cargo door, put the stuff in,
Yeah.
and then off we go.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
What a great story. So what do you think of this? So you've been preparing for the economy to crash. What's your thoughts in terms of businesses to acquire or to sell? I mean, you've had a kind of an outside perspective for now 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
First, and I do want to talk about that experience of actually selling your business, but looking back now 2 years later, about you don't have the day-to-day hustle bustle of running a business. You don't even have to worry about the business, who you're hiring, firing, sales, but you get a chance to kind of see the bigger picture. So what are you seeing from your eyes as a serial entrepreneur, as an investor, as a business coach? Where do you see businesses in terms of acquisitions or sales or bankruptcy? I mean, what I've been reading is 16 to 20% bankruptcy in fourth quarter of small to medium-sized businesses. Is that what you're seeing, or what do you?
I'm amazed it's that low.
I mean, that's just a projection,
Yeah.
Who knows?
And I'm amazed it's that low. So, okay. So this is a really big conversation about macroeconomics and then driving it all the way down to the Main Street level. And I'm baffled. I'm completely baffled at how people are able to buy a house right now. I'm like, you have no income. If I was the bank, there's no way on earth I'm giving a loan to anybody.
They're paying $50,000 over asking.
I am just beside myself. And we were looking at buying a house, and I've decided, no way. I am going to sit back. Even if it takes 2 years, this house of cards is coming down. There's no earthly way that this makes any sense whatsoever. Now I go back and I say that, but with an asterisk, because we've not experienced the massive inflation that there was back in the 70s. And when you look at other economies throughout history, when there was a fiat currency, which is what we have, there was this push because eventually every single 100% of the time it happens with a fiat currency is that the central bank, they put out so much cash that they can't pay back that debt. So now it goes and goes and goes. And the only way to overcome that is by pumping out more. So they got to keep the gap the same. So they're just pumping money out. And then it goes to, in our economy, there's several layers, but the bonds and the treasuries and the reserves by the bank over here, that money doesn't necessarily get to the general economy. That's why we see the stock market going up so much when nothing else is doing that and the rest of the economy is completely crazy. But there will come a day when that starts coming.
Well, eventually. Yeah. I mean, that's a cycle.
And that's going to be the inflation that the Fed is talking about pushing. And so whenever you have asset values like real property or businesses or, your stock portfolios and those kind of things, that's the assets that are looking to inflate. And so where I'm at right now is I don't own anything. And so that's where I'm worried, because every day that my bank account just has dollars in it, the purchasing power of that dollar goes down. So I am honestly freaking out right now because, one, I'm scared to buy anything because the economy is yet to show the signs of its true health. And the second is the inflation is eating away at the cash that I have in the bank, even though I have, the cash is invested in interest-bearing accounts at like 2.5% or something like that. It's not enough to keep up with inflation, and I still have to use that money to live on. So I'm eating away at it, plus inflation's eating away at it. And the vision that keeps coming in my head, and I pray that this is not going to happen, is right after World War II, and Germany had their franc was devalued. They had to carry an entire wheelbarrow of that stuff to buy a loaf of bread, and it was cheaper to burn than firewood. And that, I don't think it'll get to that. I hope not in our lifetime.
Well, they're removing all the currency. So I know you've probably been hunkered down in your house, but they're removing currency out of it because they want a crypto-based currency or a digital currency. And a lot of smart people are talking about this as this is coming for sure.
Oh yeah.
And ways to use it from a stimulus standpoint in the future is really just like, they'll just put it in your account and you have 30 days to use it. Yes,
because
a lot
that
of
doesn't
people
make me uncomfortable at all.
they already have all that.
Else.
Yeah, no.
Oh
There's some cool things coming out though, like global digital wallets that will be a universal based currency that's non-cryptocurrency. So there's some really cool things. Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah, it's a non-crypto universal currency. So it's based in your own country's currency, but it's an exchange rate essentially for it. And Facebook all of the tech companies are making it, but it's all going to be independent. So it's going to be very fascinating what happens. But to your point, I know not running a business right now, you might not see it, but the PPP money, the EIDL money, it was just loaded into the economy. And so part of, I think, the reason why people are making some decisions the way they are is because there is artificial cash flow. And the other artificial cash flow, which most people don't talk about, is that everybody who had a mortgage that I know hasn't had to pay for a mortgage for 6 months. And so when you don't have to pay your mortgage for 6 months and it just gets added to the back of your loan, which all these banks converted to just deferments for these to the end of your loan.
Ludicrous.
But it's great for people. And if the banks aren't worried about it, then it's fine for the banks because they don't have to retake over a house. They don't have to go through court. They don't have to pay for lawyers. They don't have to pay a realtor fee. There's a lot of money that when they take over a house and try to sell it. And so I don't know. I don't know if they'll be able to, I think you're right though. There is a point.
Yeah.
And it's either the economy comes back or it's,
living off of the inflationary dollar that the Fed is printing out and the government is signing off on, because eventually people are going to have to start paying mortgage and paying rent. And
I think people aren't reliably able to make the best decision for themselves. And so you saw a lot of people use the money that they did get inappropriately to get more debt. And that was like the opposite of what you're supposed to.
That's right. Yes.
Oh, good. Let's go buy another TV.
That's right. Yes. Now, I did see an interesting chart yesterday, I think it was, and it was the income, and it showed a graph of since like 1980 or something like that to today, and it showed how the normal income was going up and up and up. And then with all that PPP money and all the other stimulus, the tax stuff, it just shot up like crazy. But now it's starting to come back down again. And so with talks of this other stimulus and everything, I'm wondering if that's going to come up again.
Yeah, it'll be interesting for sure, just to see what happens. Because I don't know, if a business is bad financially, they should just, at this point, close.
You would think, but why? Let me ask you this. If I had a business still, and if I qualified for this free money from the PPP, there's no way I'm closing the doors. I get paid to not be in business.
Well, I think what's going to happen, and this is, I haven't heard a single op-ed on this at all, but the first applications for the forgiveness of the PPP is going into effect next week. So it's kind of been that 24 weeks, that's 6 months since it kind of was released. And so we're going to start seeing that it's a 6 to 8 week process for the banks, plus another 6 to 8 week process. So once that money gets forgiven, then you're off the hook. I think businesses are just trying to stay on.
And
but if they don't forgive it,
I still own a business right now.
You're liable for that money. I mean, if it's a really low interest rate, but if they don't forgive it, then you're still liable, And so I think that there's this.
But look at the policy. Look at the politics of it right now. They're going to forgive it. If they didn't, they're literally signing their own death warrant, because all of it is just going to come crashing down, and they're going to be holding the potato when the song ends.
The banks are fine. I mean, the banks are 100% guaranteed.
That's right, because the Fed has already said they're buying their debt. They're starting to buy commercial debt now, commercial bonds.
Well, banks, they all met their lending threshold. So it's a weird, when you're talking with the bank, they're like, we met all of our goals this year for lending. And our risk is like way low because 80% of our loans this year have been government sponsored PPP. And so they're like, well, we're sitting great, properly leveraged, 100% guaranteed. Life is good, from a bank. So they're not taking on as many risky loans as either. So it's just a weird timing. So many great micro and macroeconomics going on. And I think the cool part is that most people are saying the same thing. Everyone's saying it a little bit differently, but everybody's kind of sending that same general trend. And so it's just really a matter of, but we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And that's really what I'm sitting at too is, I was looking at a couple of businesses and one was in the construction space and we got digging in, started getting into negotiations and stuff like that. And I'm like, you know what? I just can't do it. The deal was a great deal. I think there was a lot of upside to it. And a person or whoever was going to buy it, they probably, for as long as this current situation is going on, they were going to do fantastic. And they probably could have made back their entire investment in the first year, 18 months, no problem. But the risk for me was way, way beyond what I was comfortable with.
I just don't know what's going to happen. It's an uncalculable risk, really. Yeah. I think it is. I think unlike 2008, which you knew what you were getting yourself into, 2009, it. But like this, you just don't know. I mean,
okay. I got two examples for you. One, and they're both involve oil. So do you remember back in March when oil went to negative $30 a barrel?
Yes.
So I had invested in, there's two funds. There's EFTs and then there's an ETN, which is it's a leveraged account based on the price of the contracts. Yeah. So I saw this thing I knew oil was going to go down a lot. And so I was buying, and as it was going down, buying, and I think it started at like $14. And then it went down to there and it got down to 64 cents and I was still buying. And then they all of a sudden one day I couldn't trade those things anymore. And I'm like, what the heck happened? And then I go digging and I'm like, what's happening with this thing? And they're like, oh, we've closed that fund. And I'm like, seriously? And you weren't going to tell anybody or do anything? And they're like, yeah, we took a voluntary liquidation of the fund because it hit this trigger of a 25% price difference in one day. And I'm like, that would have been nice to know. And so I'm like, okay, well, lesson learned, lost, a few $1,000s in that one. Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, well, I still know that oil is going to be really volatile. And so then I'm like, okay, I buy into this. I won't buy into an ETF this time because they're a lot more structured. They have a lot more rules around it.
Yeah, right.
And so I was like, okay, same thing, buying it on the way down, buying it, doing everything is going good. And then it started out at $40 for this contract or the spot price that it was at. And it got down to like $1.20 or something like that. Or no, it wasn't even that. It was $20. And so I'm like, okay, so bought some more. And then we get a notice that says trading algorithm updated. And I'm like, what the heck is this?
Wow.
And in one day, without a vote, without any voting, without notice, nothing, they literally changed the rules of how they were valuing that. Wow. And so all of that I bought down is gone.
Wow.
I'm like, are you freaking serious? And so for me, one of my big rules has always been I don't invest in the stock market because I can't control it. And twice in 1 month, I got burned. Yeah. For the exact reason why I've always told myself and everybody else not to invest in the stock market because you'll get burned.
Mr. Webb, you are a very smart guy. You should listen to yourself every once in a while.
Oh my gosh. But I was like, no, this is a sure thing, man. Oil's going down. And they literally changed the rules.
Yeah. Maybe you just should go buy options next time, straight up.
I did that before too. I lost my pants on that too. I suck at the whole stock market thing.
All right. Just keep your money in your 1% interest bearing, 0.5% interest bearing.
Yeah, 2.5. Although I did discover a really nice tool using whole life insurance policies that have a big paid up premium where you can get a 4%
guaranteed
bump on that. Yeah. So, and you can loan against it at full value and blah, blah, blah.
See, you talked about getting back into your businesses. Do you think you're going to wait probably till 2021 then? Or do you think you're still kind of open for that right opportunity? I mean,
Yeah.
if there was a cash flowing ice cream shop down the street that's for sale that you
Not
like.
ice cream. No, I'm not looking to buy a job. So I know restaurants. No, I'm looking. I'm actively looking right now. So I've been, I've got feelers out with different brokers and M&A people, all kinds of stuff.
Do you feel antsy? Like, do you feel like I need to how long did it take you after you sold your business, like your big business, to like calm down and like not feel antsy anymore?
That's a good question. It was probably honestly, it was when I saw the money in my personal account, and it had been in there for about a month. I'm like, oh, this is actually mine. This is weird.
I don't have to pay it back. And
I don't have to pay it back. It's not a line of credit draw or anything. Yeah. And so it started to dawn on me then, and I could start budgeting personally out. And, okay, we need at least 12 months of expenses, that's and living the current lifestyle and this, and okay, we put the money over here, starting to put it all into its different buckets. And okay, hey, now I've got, this money I can go lose in the stock market again. I don't like that. But no, it took a while, but now I was telling my wife that I feel like I'm in the exact place I was in 2006 when I was trying to buy my first investment property, because the market is going so crazy. Everything is just going around like this. And I'm like, I'm missing out, and I want to get in the action, not necessarily because I see there's real value, but just to get in the action. But, the wisdom over those last couple of years is, look, I don't need to. I'm finally at a point where I don't have to, and there's no way I'm going to take a risk that will jeopardize all of that. And the two pieces of advice I got when I sold my company, because I talked to other people. Now, I didn't sell my company. I can't retire for life. I didn't hit the mega millions or anything like that. But
wasn't a nine digit
yeah, right.
$100 million.
So the two pieces of advice is, one guy said, don't do anything for 1 year.
I've heard that one before.
You're not allowed. Don't get into another business. Don't do anything. Travel, spend time with your family. Don't do anything for a year.
Yeah, I've heard that.
That's what I did. And it was fantastic advice. The other thing he said is, don't lose it on your next venture.
Yep.
Because
keep your nest egg.
Yes. I mean, divvy it out, be wise with it, separate it out. So, hey, here's a chunk of money that I'm going to put into this fund that if I lose it all, it will really suck. But I won't be bankrupt. So, that's what I'm trying to balance that. I want to play to win because I want to go out and go get it. That's the entrepreneur drive in all of us.
There's plenty of time though. That's the thing.
And I think there is just a enormous opportunity coming, both with the just natural aging of the current business owner age. A lot of these people that have owned these companies for 20, 30, 40 years, they're done. And their kids usually don't want it. And if they're generational, by the third generation, they're completely out, or they're ruining the company. Along
those lines, 10 years ago, people in the 50s, when you were 50 years old and you got fired, you didn't want to go back to a job. So you started your own business, or you took these opportunities to actually go out and take a chance, and you were successful. So now you want to retire because you're 60 or 62 or 65. And so I agree with that. I think that's very wise.
Yep. And then the other thing, of course, is in the chaos is opportunity. And, I get a hot idea about once every 20 minutes, and I'm like, oh, this will be the next best thing, and start doing a bunch of research and look at this and go, maybe not. Okay. Oh, I got this idea. Yeah, let's do this. This would be awesome. It's got a membership model. Oh, that's fantastic. All this stuff. And then I look at it and I go, oh, that's actually like a lot of work to do that. Oh, this will be great. So I don't know. I do everything backwards in my life. So I'm sure that when that opportunity comes, I'm going to jump into it with probably not near as much due diligence as I should have done. And with the all the other stuff that can go wrong.
Well, I ended up starting USA Staffing in 2010. So it was, 2 or 3 years after the recession actually hit. I mean, I had another business, Superior Business Staffing, that I was running, and then I shut down just from logistics. I shut it down 1 month, and the next month started USA Staffing with a different model, but it was more of a pivot than anything, just a formal kind of LLC change. But the key, I think, is that based on my experience, you have time. And that's the coolest part, is that you can actually like be very particular what you want, and then do 100% seller financing. I think that's going to be coming over the next year or two. There's going to be a lot of businesses that want seller financing, or that will allow seller financing for half the cost that they would, so it's really just a matter of, you got a book. What is it?
So in Warren Buffett's, his Intelligent Investor, Benjamin Graham, this is what Warren Buffett bases all of his stuff off of. The cigar butt investing that's in there is where, a nice cigar on the ground, it's only got a few puffs left in it. It's gross and disgusting, but it's free. And I am absolutely convinced that is coming in the near future.
I think so too. Yeah. I think there's a lot of businesses that are going to close up, like I mentioned, after the PPP loans, or just not being able to make it. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I hope not. And, help, because we've all been in some tough spots if you're an entrepreneur with cash flow, and like, holy crap, I don't know if we're going to make payroll.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you haven't gone through that, then you haven't really even been tested yet. I think that's the big thing, is that the people who are, I mean, just to flip the switch here, the people in our chapter are thriving. I mean, if you were an entrepreneur in a forum, we are all just kicking butt. There is not a single member in our chapter that is just not succeeding right now. And it's all these strategic pivots that we, through kind of dedicated forums and meeting every 2 weeks, because we increased our forum every 2 weeks during the heat of forum, just digitally, virtually. But everybody in my forum is thriving. It's crazy to see like how cool it is when you have the people that you could stay on top or ahead of the trends and make better business decisions. But the EO community that in and of itself is worth being a member. So I think
saved my butt a number of times.
Yeah. So cool. Well, what else you want to talk about? Anything else in terms of any advice you want to give entrepreneurs in terms of strategies for exiting, or what to do when you don't have to run a business, or anything like that you want to end?
Go have a midlife crisis and make it a good one. No, so I wanted to share a few things I learned selling my company.
Okay.
And some really valuable nuggets that I got out of it.
Cool.
The first is in the actual asset purchase agreement, because in my business, it was an asset sale, not a stock sale.
Yes.
So we did an asset sale, and there was some language in there about, if an issue comes up, do you abide by the state of, in my case, it was Colorado, laws? But then I made sure to put in there, it was binding arbitration. Okay. So, because I'd been in a situation before where, as a company, as a business, I am not allowed to represent myself if something litigious comes up. I have to hire an attorney. And paying attorneys was more motivating to settle than actually going and finding out, the right thing. Okay. So I had a situation with some partners that it was cheaper to settle with them than it was to pay the attorneys.
Okay.
On my side, even if we won, it would have been cheaper just to write them a check and say, here you go. And so by putting in the binding arbitration, I now can represent myself.
Right.
I can do it all the way through, but up to a point, for me, it's financially a lot better to represent myself, because some of the things are just kind of stupid that they come back with, or that they want to argue about little points here and there. And rather than paying $300, $400, $600, $800 an hour for an attorney, I can just go through on my own emails, find it and say, oh yeah, remember when you said this? Here you go.
Yep.
So that has already saved me $50,000 just in attorney's fees, having that one clause in there. And the other thing that I didn't learn this until afterwards, this will be for the next one, is you can put in there with that arbitration, you can put in there a non-representation clause as well, which means, look, it's just, if it's a simple transaction, it's like, look, I don't want to get an attorney involved. I don't want you to get an attorney involved, and we'll just go to the arbitrator. We'll present our case old school. Here's what I got. Here's what you got. And let's just give it to the arbitrator.
Nice. Okay.
And I didn't know that I could do that. And apparently it's very common. And that's definitely going to be going in my next contract that it's appropriate for. The other thing was selling a company. Everybody knows this. And there's been a lot of books written on it about getting your financials in order 3 years before you actually think you're going to sell that company.
Yeah.
And that was the case, because I had 1 year where we had to do an amendment to my taxes. And man, I got to tell you, it messes everything up. Because now you're like, okay, well, we got to explain this, and you got to do this, and then if the financials are already published out to the buying world, now you got to go back. It was just a massive pain in the butt. And then the last thing that has been great, even though I felt super guilty about it at the time, was don't tell a soul that you're selling the business. Nobody. And
until when?
Until the day that money hits your bank account, and you're on the phone, or however you're doing your meetings, and you're like, hey, by the way, I sold the company, and here are the new owners.
Oh, like customers, you mean, or employees and customers?
Anybody that has anything to do with the business, except maybe outside, partners, people that have to be part of the decision.
Yeah, right.
But the acute confidentiality, just in what I've experienced after the sale, because I'm going through an arbitration issue right now because some other stuff, but because I did not tell anybody, and I didn't give a bonus, I didn't give a bonus because the actual agreement hasn't been completed yet, because they still owe money, because there was an earn out part of it that takes a while. So I feel super guilty about it, but I'm like, I'm stuck in this place where if I was to give a bonus to an employee or to a key manager or somebody like that, well, now the buyers come back and they say, you were in cahoots with that key employee, and you guys worked together to misrepresent or to do this thing against us, and you paid him, so he was compensated. Now he gets drawn into this thing. And so I'm like, good Lord, you guys. So I felt super guilty about not telling anybody and about not bonusing anybody or anything until it was 100% complete. And I'm so glad I did that, because it would have, not only would it have bit me, it would have bit the person who would have got bonused or who would have been a part of it. So they would have then been drawn into this whole ordeal. So it's weird, but I'm really glad I did it.
Yeah, it's something to think about, at least. I wouldn't have thought about it.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have either until I've been through this experience. And that's what they were trying to do. Was say, oh, this key employee, you and him were, in cahoots, and you were operating a different company. I'm like, no, I was in an RV traveling the country and getting yelled at by a staff sergeant that I need to do more push-ups. So I don't know where you're getting this, but not true.
Wow.
So anyways, lots of good lessons.
I appreciate it. I love these stories, and I love getting the fact to get to know you a little bit better, because I think, you have so many fun stories, and yet every time you're like, oh, I'm on vacation for, traveling the world for the RV, or I'm going off to the military. So
making some other questionable decision.
Yeah. Maybe you should have your wife sign off on all decisions moving forward. for the
Yeah,
next
she
3
does.
months.
She absolutely does. But you know what? Like traveling in the RV and all that stuff, even the
Yeah,
military, everything. I'm like, you got to be good with it, babe, or else we're not doing it. The
yeah,
plane. She's like,
yeah,
yes, you can do it, and
yeah,
she
good.
hasn't been up with me yet, but she said she will. But
Cool.
she'll go up yet.
Good, good, good. Well, James, it was awesome having you on the show today. Thank you very much. And I wish you all the best for the next couple of businesses you buy.
Yeah. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate your time today, and just anything I can do to help, just let me know.
All right. Sounds good. I'm going to remove you and I'm going to close out the show. So you stay around. Well, you heard it here. James Webb, entrepreneur you should know. Fascinating story. Moving all around the world in terms of his dedication for his faith, his dedication to his family, his goals in terms of freedom and adventure. Really, it's just a cool way of living life. I think that what we've learned from James today is it's never too late to make a decision, and to really not live with regrets is a freedom in and of itself. And so thank you for listening to the show, and please follow us on our Facebook page, eotampabay.com, or you can follow me as well on my personal and YouTube pages, Matthew Kalinsky. Thank you very much. Have a great day.